A fast ship written by WritingDrakon. Hercon huffed in annoyance. Their charge was a representative from the Gersh hegemony, known for his, to borrow the human term, tendency to be scrooges on everything. He sought out the cheapest, fastest ships that were remotely reputable for transport, forging buying their own despite having the money for it, simply saying they didn't want to pay for the crew. Their own ship would have been better given the current situation, hunkered down, cloaked as their daughter hissed explicits at their sire for their stupidity as they avoided prowling mercenaries. Near the docks sat a human, clothed in heavy, old, well-loved and maintained pressure suit, his helmet retracted, revealing his younger age. Thrall, the suit looked older than him. "Hercon and Company," the human said quietly, noting how the three had sidled up, avoiding as many looks as they could. "I am, and this is—"
"Lord Brisbane. Word travels fast," the young human said with a grin, tilting his head. "Inside we'll talk more there," he said, jerking his head as he went back to how he had been, turning back the creamy brew, the scent of caffeine making Hercon's body twitch, wanting some of that heaty, wonderful brew, but decided that it would be best to drink later. The three clambered aboard and learned quickly why the trip was so cheap. The ship was small, little more than a cockpit, kitchenette, all in one room, and a separated engineering bay. Brisbane's daughter huffed as she yanked her hood down, revealing her helmeted, almost alligator-like head, her central eye still glaring at her sire as her helmet retracted into the back of her suit.
"Cramped, but, comfortable," she sighed.
The lilt in her voice tired as she poked at one of the guest beds already secured to the floor, including crash webbing. There were two bolted down and a chair attached to the comms console near the kitchenette, with crash webbing, which struck Hercon as odd. Why did every chair/bed have crash webbing?
"Sorry for the lack of seating. I'm a data runner. Don't normally run passengers,"
the young captain said, popping up behind them. The sound of the seating airlock heard through the small vessel.
"Welcome aboard. Now, destination is the Flower of Light, you said,"
he said, arms folded, staring at them as they heard the coffee maker kicking in, a carafe filling with the dark, soul-saving liquid, making Hercon twitch again. The human spotted the twitch and set down 3 metallic mugs. After removing them from the mag-locking cabinet, letting them get the bitter brew, even as Brisbane nodded.
"You presume correctly, Captain. Swift as possible, if you could," he rumbled,
before grimacing, setting several rectangular credit chips on the table.
"With a little extra, if you can manage it before she leaves the system."
Harkin stifled a smile as he slowly tipped back his mug. Hopefully, young Duria's lessons on generosity helped.
"I'll see what I can do. She's a capital class, but the Saturn's got her down tickets. Best finish those quickly or put a lid on them and lock them down," the captain said, an amused glint flashing in his eye as he motioned to the crash webbing. "Hercon, mind joining me in the cockpit? Chances are the light is going to need clearance codes, and I would rather not ruin the RCS clusters,"
he said, muttering again under his breath. With a sigh, Hercon nodded, tipping back the hot brew, letting it warm his lethargic, aging body, before clambering into the co-pilot chair next to the pilot's chair, gaze dancing around the cockpit. It was small but relatively roomy, likely due to the captain's bulky suit, and, speaking of whom, the captain clambered into the pilot's seat, cheeks full of what was likely the remainder of a nutrition bar, before he swallowed thickly.
"Sorry, wasn't expecting to get the job this quickly."
He apologized, getting a smirk out of Hercon, reminded of his old squad mates trying to finish their meal when an alarm had gone off. Shaking himself from his musings, he watched as the human rapidly began pre-flight checks, while calling the traffic control tower.
Breaker, this is Saturn V to control. IFF code Sierra Oscar November 1 Charlie, prepping for launch. Flight computer transmitting path now,"
he said, listening to the returning chatter as the flight computer glowed and the ship rumbled like a beast waking from its sleep, oddly loud for such a small vessel.
"Saturn 4, this is control. That's a negative on that launch," the comms crackled, making the human frown at the Vox unit. "Scanners showing that we have a hyena vessel sitting right outside the launch bay. Weapons hot. Unless you got a good-sized gun on that rowboat, we can't allow you to take off."
Herkin cursed softly, setting back even as the human fiddled with something. Control, this is Saturn, sending amended flight plan, amended takeoff routine and engine design now. Requesting permission to buzz tower and habitat section, he said, even as he began to open red hatches on his console and began flipping them up. Every switch he flipped, the rumbling got louder and louder. Saturn V, this is Control. Permission granted. Arranging launch bay for hot launch. Cameras prepped and rolling. The comms crackled, getting Herkin's attention. A drop of dread filling his upper stomach. What did? Roger that one, Control. Betty, we can't see their faces. Keep comms open and wide. We should at least hear them. The captain replied with a grin, even as he reached for the other systems. Slowly pushing a set of levers up to the top, and then flicked off the shields, before reaching for a long lever next to his seat that was set in the up position, not unlike the old ground-bound automobile handbrake. The shield was very, very telling. First, it meant either A, they were screwed and they picked a ship about to turn them in, unlikely given the conversation. The other, Herkin quickly grabbed the crash webbing, slamming it down over himself in a panic. My lord, madam, I would advise that you secure yourselves. Quickly, he barked out, his main eyes focused ahead, his third eye focused on the pilot with dread and anticipation. The human grinned as he heard the confused guttural language from behind him. Launch in 3, came the countdown from Control as the doors before them opened up, all but the last one. The sound of scaffolding releasing the vessel in zero gravity. Then the faint hum of pumps removing air. 2. The armor paneling moved up behind them, visible on the rear crew cameras, scorched and well used. Other arms locking it in place, even as the ship seemed to rumble louder with each passing moment. Steady, girl, steady, the human muttered under his breath, hand tightening on the lever, thumb pressing down on the button at the tip. 1. Launch, the SDC controller said as the outer doors opened up like an iris, and the captain slammed the lever down, and the ship roared. Herkin was thrown back into his chair as the engine snarled to life, barely making out startled yelps and cursing behind them. The engine audible thanks to the engine room as it propelled the small ship forward like a missile. Atomic fire actually licking up past the cockpit for a moment before they cleared the station at a blistering speed, zipping past the launch cruiser sitting outside. He was thrown again as the human yanked the lever up, shutting the engine off, and then yanked the control yoke sideways, the ship snarling as her RCS clusters burned, spinning the ship 180 degrees, turning to face the startled null vessel. Several fighters spinning around to see what was launched. Herkin cursed loudly as he was thrown back again, slammed into the chair, saved only by his helmet and the wonderful cushion on the chair as the human slammed the ignition lever down again, even as the vessel howled again. The engine once more shook the ship like a graven trap, slowing them down and then racing forwards again, zipping between the fighters, skimming past the surface of the null cruiser, and then rocketed past control viewport. Even as vicious curses were spat over the Vox at their speed. What the feck? Came the controller's voice as the little vessel sped along the station towards the slowly rotating habitat ring. Come on! A little faster, girl. I know you got it in you, the human mumbled, even as he pushed the acceleration levers as far as they would go up. The ship snarled as they got closer and closer. Red lights zipped past on either side as the gnolls tried to shoot at them with fighters splashing off the station shields just past them. Fighters trying to close the distance, but only fell further and further behind, just as they zipped between the support beam of the habitat ring, now facing the black void of space, with no targets other than them. Saturn V to control, clearing station, attempting to get safe distance to engage skipper drive, the human grunted out, pressed against his seat, not shutting the engine off. Herkin understood why, unfortunately, but still itched to turn on the shields back up, feeding naked with only the deflectors on, keeping micrometeors from turning them into a hole-filled slag pile, but knew he couldn't. They were literally going too fast for a shield generator that would fit the ship's size to keep up. They would outfly their own shields. Saturn V, you are clear to jump when ready. Thanks for one hell of a show, came the SDC controller. Mild whooping heard in the background. Just a heads up, the null ship's trying to give chase. Blink and try. Commencing skip in 3, 2, 1, the human said and slammed the lever back up, the main engines shutting off, and slammed his hand on the button in the center of his console. White filled their vision, accompanied by the low purring of something other. Aboard the Flower of Light, the command crew were focused on their tasks, listening out for any ships dropping in. The captain standing at the viewport, nervously flicking their tail. "Captain, skip signature detected. Sweet Krell," the census officer shrieked, a distant flash of light seen through the viewport. "They popped out at 2,300 kilometers per second. Are they, Additional contacts. Light null cruiser right on top of them," the officer said, as the flower slowly turned to face the light. "On the screens, sensors. Weapons on standby. Target lock on nulls," Garish said, grimly, as then an image flicked onto the screen, revealing what amounted to a small habitat module and a cockpit, bolted onto an engine twice the size of a habitable section. Shaped like an old Convair-class shuttle, but hadn't ditched her lower stage. Her main engine bathed whatever was behind her in nuclear fire. A wide plume of her propulsion exhaust pushing her forward at a startling rate, racing towards the flower like her life depended on it. 2,500, 3,000, and still climbing, came the shaken whisper as the ship didn't attempt to slow down. "Sir, box channel, open with ship. Code confirmed. Lord Brisbane is aboard," the box officer yelled as the tiny human vessel kept accelerating, and then shut its engine off. Her RCS engines glowing brightly, spinning 180 degrees, her single massive engine aimed at them before it ignited. She was slowing down, adjusting her vector to align with the hangar. "All cannons, knock those nulls into the void. I want Minicle down in the hangar, now!" the flower's captain roared. One claw pointed at the null vessel, even as the more engine, then ship vessel slowed down next to them, now out of the captain's sight. Though now he had more pressing issues as the vessel rocked, her main batteries opening up with a vicious salvo, rocketing the null cruiser, making it bring its attention up to the much larger capital ship. Herken groaned as he felt the ship, comparatively, gently strafed sideways, feeling as she shuddered, long, underused landing gear extended out and a soft shake as she landed, purring like an overgrown feline who had gotten a forbidden treat. "That was a, experience," he said, trying desperately to not be too ill. Even as the human laughed. "Not the craziest stunt I've ever pulled. Just glad that we landed in one piece. Last time I burnt out every RCS cluster I had, trying to outmaneuver a rogue nanite assembly," the young captain said, grinning a little, even as he clambered out. "Was a hell of a lot of fun, though," he said, as Herken slowly pulled himself out of the crash webbing. In the back, the Lord was stuck to the bed in crash webbing, his helmet up, the visor completely covered and sick. "I'm never flying on a human vessel again," his daughter groaned, head resting on the console before her, stuck in the chair's crash webbing, coffee splattered all over her general vicinity, an empty, uncovered mug next to her. The hatch opened, and Herken smiled as the medic sprinted in, collecting up the Lord and his daughter, who got up shakily. Later, as he and the human rode the elevator, headed to the bridge, he looked down through the window to see the Saturn. He balked, seeing that lost what they had been flying on. "What? I thought you knew that she was an old Convair," the human said, seeing what his reaction was, grinning a little. "Nothing faster than the old girl for her class," he said with a lopsided grin. He stared at the human and then sighed, staring at the innocently sitting vessel till the elevator finally passed through the ceiling, headed to the bridge. End of story. I'd greatly like to thank our Tier 5 channel members, Casper Arnholtz, John Creighton, Manatharia, 050, Dragzoon WRE, and Elijah Silvercross. Thank you very much.